There's a moment that happens to almost everyone. Your device stops working. You do some research online, and within minutes, you're drowning in conflicting advice from people who claim to be experts. One forum says you need specialized equipment. Another says it's too dangerous to attempt yourself. A third insists it's simple, but uses terminology you don't understand. And by the end of it, you feel more confused than when you started. So you give up. You take the device to a repair shop or you just buy a new one. Because clearly, this is beyond your capability. But what if the confusion isn't because the task is actually complicated? What if it's because complexity serves a purpose and that purpose isn't helping you? Let me tell you about something that happened repeatedly at the recycling facility. People would bring in devices personally, wanting to know if anything could be salvaged before we process them. Most of the time, I'd test the device right in front of them. And most of the time, the issue was the battery. I'd explain this. I'd show them the device working when plugged in. I'd explain that the battery could likely be addressed with basic steps. And almost every time, they'd say the same thing. But I took it to a repair shop and they said it couldn't be fixed. Not that it couldn't be fixed affordably. Not that they didn't offer that service. They'd been told it couldn't be fixed at all. This is where people usually stop questioning. Because when someone with a technical title tells you something can't be done, you believe them. They're the expert. They know better than you do. But here's what I learned watching this pattern repeat itself dozens of times. The person telling you it can't be fixed often has a reason for saying that. And that reason isn't always about the device. Sometimes the repair isn't profitable for them. Sometimes they don't have the skills for that specific type of repair. Sometimes they make more money selling you a new device than fixing the old one. So they tell you it can't be done. And you believe them because you don't have a reason not to. Now, I'm not saying all repair shops are dishonest. Many are genuinely helpful. But the industry has a built-in incentive problem. The more complicated they make things sound, the more dependent you become on their services. And that dependency gets reinforced every time you try to learn something yourself and encounter unnecessarily complex explanations. Here's a real example. A woman brought in a laptop. It wouldn't charge. She said she'd taken it to 3 different repair shops. All 3 told her the motherboard was fried. All 3 quoted her repair costs that exceeded the laptop's value. I plugged it in. Nothing happened. I opened the battery compartment. The battery was swollen, visibly bulging. I removed the swollen battery and plugged the laptop directly into power. It booted up immediately. Everything worked. The problem wasn't the motherboard. It was a failing battery that had swollen enough to create a poor connection with the charging port. Once removed, the laptop functioned perfectly on direct power alone. She stared at me. 3 shops told me the motherboard was dead. I nodded. They probably didn't open it. They just saw it wouldn't charge and made an assumption. This is where most people stop trusting their own judgment, because if 3 professionals all said the same wrong thing, how are you supposed to know better? How can you, someone without training, possibly diagnose something that experts got wrong? But here's the truth. Technical knowledge and diagnostic skill aren't the same thing. You don't need to understand electrical engineering to test whether a battery is the problem. You don't need a degree to know that swapping power sources reveals which component failed. You don't need certification to recognize when something doesn't add up. What you need is a willingness to ask basic questions and test simple things before accepting someone else's conclusion. Most expert diagnoses aren't based on deep analysis. They're based on pattern recognition and profitability. The technician sees a device that won't charge, assumes it's the most common profitable repair, and moves on to the next customer. They're not trying to mislead you. They're just working within a system that doesn't reward thoroughness when quick conclusions are more efficient. But that system doesn't serve you. It served them. So what's the alternative? It's not to distrust all professionals. It's to verify first, then seek help if needed. Before you take a device to a shop, test the obvious things yourself. Swap the battery. try a different charger. Check for physical damage. See if the device works when connected to direct power. If those simple tests don't reveal anything, then yes, professional help makes sense. But at that point, you're not going in blind. You're going in with information. You know what you've already ruled out, and that changes the dynamic entirely. When you walk into a repair shop and say, "I've tested the battery and the charger, both are fine," the device still won't work. You're no longer a passive customer hoping for an answer. You're someone who's already done half the diagnostic work. That gets you better service. It gets you more honest answers. And it often gets you lower costs, because the technician isn't charging you for steps you've already completed. But the deeper benefit isn't just about repair shops. It's about learning to trust your own competence every time you test something yourself and discover the answer. You prove to yourself that you're more capable than you thought, that the barrier between expert and regular person isn't as wide as it seems, and that realization changes how you approach everything. You stop deferring to authority automatically. You stop assuming that complexity means you can't understand it. You start recognizing when someone is overcomplicating something to maintain their position as the gatekeeper of knowledge. This doesn't mean you become arrogant or dismissive of genuine expertise. It means you become discerning. You know when to trust others and when to trust yourself. And in a world designed to keep you dependent, that's a quiet form of power. The next time someone tells you something can't be fixed, ask yourself, have I tested the simple things first? Do I actually know that? Or am I just trusting someone who might have an incentive to say it? You don't need to be an expert to ask good questions, and most of the time, the answer is simpler than anyone wants you to believe.